Hey everybody, welcome to Homeschooling Hub, and I'm Jill Wolf, learning specialist, and I help homeschool parents to plan meaningful and exciting lessons to awaken the learn and learning, and I'm excited to be here with you today. For those of you who've been a part of this group for a while, it has been morphing and evolving as I'm growing and discovering what really is the expertise that I'm bringing and how am I bringing that to you. So I'm excited today to bring you this. Awaken the learn and learning. My LEARN is an acronym that stands for some very important pieces of learning, but the L is love for learning. And I've been doing some different blogs and some pieces about it. And so today, one of the things that I'm going to address with love of learning is play. So I'm starting a series now on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. right now. It's our first series premiere, and pilot, if you will. And I'm going to be exploring the idea of using play to improve writing. And so I had the honor of working with some homeschool moms at a conference a couple weeks ago, and we brainstormed all sorts of ways that their children play. And American Girl seems to keep popping up with some of the younger girls. So I thought I would start with American Girl. So love of learning comes when you can enjoy the learning process, when you, even though you hit some frustrations, it's tapped into something that you enjoy, and play is that. So we're going to talk tonight about American Girl. And so for those who are watching who maybe aren't as familiar with it, it is a line of dolls that that come with a name and a whole personality and a backstory. And American Girl has taken each one of these dolls and developed stories about their lives and what they're doing or what they've done or adventures they like to go on. And so the girls can get just the doll, or they can get the books and they can read about them. But primarily you have a lot of play with these dolls. And so I was talking with a couple different moms who said that the age range can really be as young as 3 and 4 all the way up to 9 or 10. So that's a wide range of young ladies that in terms of their writing skills. So today I'm going to actually brainstorm some possibilities of American Girl, tapping into American Girl play and to improve writing. And I'm going to give you a wide range of things that you could do with this. Anybody that's coming on live, I'd love to hear anything you've tried with it, or your thoughts as I throw something out, or questions about how to execute that, or even more ideas that I can add up here that come to mind as we're kind of imagining possibilities here. So we're going to start with, I'm actually going to move to my chart, and I'm going to start to put some things up here. And I'm going to start with this. I worked with one young lady, and she was creating these little mini books because she said that her American Girl needed a library. And so in her play, her American Girl has a house or some home area, and she felt she needed a library of books, so she's creating these mini books, and she was doing it as part of play. And so Mom and me worked together, and we came up with her to take these and now make some with some very specific writing parameters to it. And so I'm going to first put up here these mini books. And I say mini books because she made them about like this size, like 2 to 3 inches by 2 to 3 inches, and just took the paper and stapled it together like a little kid does for a craft. And the parameters were something like write 5 sentences, although they did discuss in advance, do you want to tell a story? So these mini books could be a story, or were they explanations of how to do something, like what we would call procedural text to make something. This one girl did how to make candy, and what to do on Thanksgiving. And so she kind of focused more on the procedures. And then as we talked, she's like, you know, next time I think I would I'd have it about an animal. So she actually was moving into what we would call informational. And she wanted to make a little book about a different animal, like a polar bear or panda bear or whatnot. So these little mini books were for her doll and for her play. And so we just worked with that. There was another little girl who was going to do a doll journal. Now this one is unique because this one is not from the perspective of your son, your daughter. It's not from the perspective of her, the writer. It's from the perspective of the doll. So she gets a chance to write in a different kind of writing. And so the doll journal could be just about what she did that day. It could be about a particular event. It could be how she feels about something. So you could create a doll journal that, like, once a week, there is some prompt or something that is given to your daughter, and she is to write in the doll journal from the perspective of the doll about this topic or in response to this prompt. So that is a whole nother kind of writing. Plus, journals are very personal and casual. I'm not writing for an audience, I'm writing for me. However, because your daughter is not writing her own journal, she's writing it for the doll. She's writing a doll journal that's personal for the doll. So she could get very specific into how the doll feels about something or what the doll did that day. Just really begins to introduce perspective, audience, and writing from a different, not just a different point of view, but even a different voice, because this doll has their own things that are going through. A letter to other dolls. So we've got the letter to other dolls could be about some event that's going on. It could be just an update on her life. Similar to the journal, but a journal is written for yourself, whereas a letter to other dolls, now I have a different audience and I have some purpose for that. So you could give some kind of prompt or something that she's writing a letter to the dolls about. Maybe it's even an invitation to something, or it's information for them, or she's just telling them some story or something that happened to them, but in a letter format. So they're addressing somebody else and they're telling some information. You have your beginning and your ending. What else do I have? Oh, you could plan. So now this is going to get a little bit bigger, more like a mini project that might take a few days versus just a couple hours or an hour or so. And this is plan. Your American Girl, I'm just going to say AG, your American Girl's Dream Vacation. Okay, and then describe what she's going to see there. Describe what she will see. So you're looking at, so where does Tenny want to go? And why would Tenny want to go there? And so then you do a little bit of, this allows you to do a little bit of research about the location and what might be there to have fun or do and why would she pick that. And then describe it. And you're going to write that out in description about what she would see. You can involve maps. You can involve some research, online research or reading from books or pamphlets. Directions on how to care for the doll. So maybe there's some special directions on how to care for her. Maybe this even could be from the perspective of, I'm writing these directions for a babysitter who's going to be watching your American Girl. What are directions on how to care for her? You know, for a really young, a younger girl, it might just be a couple things like make sure her blanket's laid over her when you put her to bed at night. Make sure she's facing sideways, that, you know, so she'll be facing me in bed. Put her in bed beside me. Maybe there's even direction. And so some of these, your child, your daughter might actually do all the writing themselves, although part of the writing process is that they do some kind of draft, and then you get to give some feedback and you guys get to work on it together. But some things, it might just be one or two sentences or one or two steps versus a page or two or a couple pages. So again, we got a wide range, 3, 4. They might just tell you the directions and you write them, and they begin to see what their words look like on paper, a 3 or 4-year-old. And so you actually do the handwriting, because they don't write yet. But they tell you what should be those directions. Okay, so I'm referring to my little list here. Let me see what else I got on here. Song lyrics. This could just be poetic. It could be descriptive. It could be, especially if your daughter likes music, or she likes, I think it's the American girl Tenny that does songwriting herself. So you could do some music things with her. Okay, a fashion show review. Now that sounds kind of funny. But I've actually had 2 girls already really want to do this one. And what it entails is they get to make the dresses, design some dresses for a couple of their girls. They can either draw them and then color them or glue on sequins, or if your daughters are older and they like to sew or can sew, then you can get them fabric. They can actually make the dress, but then they have to write a review like they were watching a fashion show and they were describing it. This gets you to work with descriptive language, adjectives, a thesaurus. One of your parameters could be you can't use any adjective more than once, so we got to look at how do we expand our descriptive language. It could be to write a story. Where the American girl is the main character. Now, there are actually a lot of books on the American Girl site and a wide range of reading levels that the girls can go already read about the girls, their American girls. And so it gives them a chance to understand more and more about the girl that they have or a girl they're interested in. But this way now you're asking them to kind of even expand further on that and come up with, well, what's another adventure this girl would go on? What's another something she would do? And they can use these as reference. I would say this is for probably like your 2nd grade and above, where they can actually start to do, like, read this adventure and see what are some of the things that this American girl likes to do, or the way she talks and the things that the kind of adventure she likes to go on. And I'm going to make up one that's different, but it's similar, and write their story. It could be as short as a picture book where they just write a few sentences on a number of pages and draw pictures. Creating picture books is a favorite. Or they could do more of a narrative story that's a couple pages long, attempting to mimic a chapter book, but certainly not writing 30 or 40 or 50 pages. They could write a review of a book. Now this, I actually just saw on the American Girl site, until the end of March, if you write a review of one of the American Girl books, you read it and you write a review and submit it, you have a chance, your name goes in a drawing for, I think, $100. So that's kind of something to look into. But a book review. So they actually read one of the existing American Girl stories and then write a review of it. And so then you get to talk about, well, what's a review? It's not a summary. It involves a little analysis and even some evaluation. So this book did this, and I found the story fascinating. Okay, so there's a little bit of analysis, evaluation, some higher level thinking there. You could compare 2 dolls. Now this is just a straight, it might be a paragraph or 2. But you play with both of these girls, and I want you to compare how they're similar, how they're different, and then we're going to write it out, like as in a couple paragraphs, and talk about, I asked one little girl, she's 7, first grader, and she was describing her 2 dolls, and not only could she describe, I mean, and none of her description in her comparison was what they looked like. It was their talent, it was their interests, it was even their voice, like their attitude and what was important to them. She'd clearly read books about both of these gals and really understood them. And so we could have taken that discussion that we had and taken it further and said, okay, so we're going to actually write out some of this and learn how to write a comparison on here. Again, this is getting a little higher. We could do word lists. I am really big on being a word collector. And as you're reading books, to pick out the words that you like. One of the girls I work with calls them juicy words, but the words that you really find fascinating. It begins to build your vocabulary much more authentically than vocab lists or even spelling lists. In fact, you could even move this to be your spelling words, is to let them pull words that they like from stories that they're reading, or even as they go, like the fashion one, as they're cultivating new descriptive words. Okay, so we're going to take, we used a thesaurus to look up sparkly, and so we're going to make 5 of those words your spelling words this week. They're words she picked, they're words she likes, much easier and more meaningful than random lists of words. But collect words from things that they're writing and they're reading, especially from the American Girl books that they're reading. Okay, what else do I have? Oh, this is a very interesting one. A discussion between 2 dolls. Now, what do you mean a discussion between 2 dolls? So you have Tenny and you have Felicity, I think was one of them. And so you understand these girls and you've read about them. So here's a topic. Let's say the topic is cooking. And so you have a discussion between these 2 about cooking. What would they say? What would Tenny say versus what would... So if they're from different places, they might like different foods. Maybe one likes to cook and one doesn't. Maybe one has a favorite fast food or has a favorite vegetable or something. So some of this backstory might already exist and be showing up in their books that they're reading about them. But some is part of their imaginative play. So let them have, what would a discussion sound like? Or maybe you're discussing what dress are you going to wear to the ball? And how are you going to choose that? So you might say, well, how's that writing? So you're going to use like voice memos on an iPhone or a tablet, or just any recording device, and record as she plays the conversation. Then take that conversation and write it out. Okay, this is the beginning of being able to write dialogue. It's the beginning of being able to write scripts or understand how to read scripts or screenplays. And most stories have characters conversing. And so being able to read dialogue and even write it, that's a big step. So if she's having these 2 dolls talking about something, now you're going to record what she's having them say and then write that out. And so you have this discussion between the 2 dolls. And pick lighter topics, especially for the younger ones. But if they're older, maybe it's a more sophisticated topic. And that's great because she's not writing right off the bat. It's imaginative play about this topic. And then she can take that. Then we go and we write it out and we learn, how do you write dialogue? You know, each new line, each new statement that someone makes is a new line, and there's quotation marks, and you need to say, did she say it? Did she yell it? Did she scream it? Did she whisper it? Like, how was it said? So there's all sorts of things about dialogue. So my goal with this list was to begin to give you some ideas of how you can take, I'm just looking at my time here. I'm almost at 20. Okay. How you could take, oh, hi, Livette. I need to get my daughter an American Girl doll. You could do this with any kind of doll. You could do this with any kind of doll. The American Girl just happens to be the one that's coming up all the time. And It happens to be the one that I have seen a lot of development in terms of book reviews. And in fact, there's an American Girl Facebook group where they're sharing some things. So that's the only reason that I'm going with American Girl. But if you have any kind of dolls, if they're older and they like Barbies, and you could do any of these kinds of things with Barbies. But it's looking at the idea of playing with dolls and the kind of play that they have. And instead of trying to infuse play, one of the gals at this conference made the statement, and the way she said it, I loved it. She said, instead of trying to plan my lesson and then make it playful or put some play in it, why don't I start with their play and look how I can bring some learning out of it. So some writing is what we're focused on, some writing out of it. And so I'm going to tip this down so you can make sure and see the whole chart. But I will take a picture of this and post it for those of you. But all of these really, each one of them require a different kind of thinking, a different point of view, a different audience, a different voice, whether it's comparative or dialogue and discussion, whether it's analysis or evaluation, whether it's reviewing something, whether it's descriptive. You've got a wide range of kind of writing that they can do on this page. Imagine if you just did one of these like every other week. Like, you've got American Girl potential learning experiences for the next 2 months from something like this. And you can just simplify it for younger, or add a little bit more expectation to the parameters. For example, let's say they're going to do a journal. And if you have a 6 or 7, even 8-year-old, you might just say, you know, your journal entry just has to be 5 to 6 sentences. But maybe as you get into 3rd grade or 4th grade, now maybe the journal entry has to be a whole page, or maybe it's 10 to 15 sentences, and then we're going to talk about it. So you can make some things more sophisticated. You might say I'm looking to see which one. Well, any of these, really. There are a handful of ways that you could make them more challenging or less challenging. I think you're going to find that starting with play and their play and then bringing writing out of it, that they're going to do more than you expect. And they're going to stay engaged longer. This really begins to build love of learning, and they will hardly realize they're doing it. Now, my goal isn't necessarily to disguise learning in such a way they don't know they're doing it, because to understand yourself as a learner, I think, is a big key to my message and what I'm bringing across. And I'll do more on that at another time. But it just makes learning more fun. It makes it more interesting. It makes it so that when I get frustrated or confused, which is part of the learning experience, I'm going to push through it a little bit harder. I might get frustrated a little later, or I might say, I really want to do this. So instead of just quitting, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to come back. That's a huge skill. And sometimes that comes about as a result of doing, starting with something I really enjoy and really like, which was play. So I hope that some of these can help give you some ideas. I would love if, especially those of you watching it in replay, and Lavette, thank you for coming live. If you have any other ideas of ways that you could use American Girl Play for writing, to improve writing, share them in the group underneath this video, and let's hash out some of these, and let's talk about some of them. And if you have questions about any of the ones that I have on here, feel free to ask those in the group. I'm excited to bring you this, and I'm excited to bring you a new one each week. So with that, I try not to go over 30 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off unless there's any questions. Lavette, you got any questions for me? Let me give you a second to put something on there. Let me just look at my notes, make sure I covered everything I wanted to cover for you guys tonight. Yeah, I think that's it. So All right. So if you have questions, put it in the body or in the thread of this in Facebook, in Homeschooling Hub. I will be excited to respond to you and engage in conversation. And if you try any of these, please come share it with us. Share a picture of their work or just a comment about the experience. And just so you know, not every one of these is going to go smooth or great, and there's going to be some stumbling. Mistakes are a huge part of learning. And so actually executing this in a lesson is going to take a little finesse and time and practice. But to just even start trying to do something like this is going to really excite your daughters. So share with me what's going on and questions that you have and other ideas. So I hope you guys have a fabulous Friday and a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya.